Our next speaker is Miss Anna Arend. Anna is the Northern California Regional Coordinator for Students for Life of America, and she's going to talk with us a little bit more about the challenges, the First Amendment free speech challenges that pro-life groups are facing on college campuses, including our own Fresno State Students for Life, some of whom are here today. So I'd ask you to give a round of applause for our good friend Anna.
All right. Good morning. So I have a fun little exercise to get you all started. So I'd like to take a minute for you to imagine a place where, ideas are exchanged freely, where First Amendment rights are upheld so well and protected, a place where new knowledge is discovered and students engage in debate and challenge one another to think critically. It sounds like a great place, doesn't it? Unfortunately, I'm still looking for one of those places. They exist, but they're few and far between. As John said, my name is Anna Arend. I'm the Northern California Regional Coordinator for Students for Life of America. Students for Life is the largest youth pro-life organization in the country. We have groups on 1,200 campuses, high school and college campuses, and our mission is to abolish abortion. So if we go to the next slide. On a daily basis, I work with college students to educate students' peers on the issue of abortion, the reality of it. We distribute pro-life literature on campus. We host displays. We support pregnant and parenting students. And we engage in politics and current events. We are, we follow school policy. We remain peaceful at all times. And we just really encourage open dialogue on campus. If we go to the next slide. So for the past 11 years, Students for Life of America has been on the front lines of the free speech movement. Yes, we're a young organization. We're only 11 years old. But we've witnessed a rising tide in opposition of anyone who doesn't agree with the dictates of the politically correct world viewpoint. So as national opinion has actually started to align with the pro-life viewpoint, we thought mistakenly that, okay, we've gotten past all of the drama. Maybe all that's left are just a few old, administrators who still don't, who can't get with the pro-life majority, because millennials are mostly pro-life. We are the majority. But we were mistaken, and when the 2016 election happened, the pro-abortion forces got scared. They started fighting back with a new energy. They feared the withdrawal of taxpayer funding. They feared pro-life Supreme Court appointments, and they feared a barrage of pro-life legislation and regulations. So if we go on to the next slide, I'm going to give you the bad news first. The bad news is they took this fight to our campuses, and that beautiful mythical place where we want to see free speech upheld and engagement in critical thinking, unfortunately has become less of a reality because of this pro-abortion push to silence the pro-life message. So they're doing everything they can on our campuses to silence Students for Life of America. And the administration and actually other students attempt to filter our messages on campus. So I'm going to tell you a few stories about the actual state of our campuses today. So if we go on to the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little story that happened last February, so almost exactly a year ago. This is Norvilia Etany, and she was a student at Queens College, New York, and she decided she wanted to start a Students for Life group on her campus. She went through all of the proper steps. She filled out the paperwork. She filled out the forms, all the proper procedures expected of her, and submitted it to the administration. First, the administration delayed in reviewing her application, and then once they actually did, they refused to accept it. They already had about 100 other student clubs, 2 of which were pro-abortion groups. To make matters worse, they received 2 other applications at the same time as Norvillia's and approved those ones immediately while still refusing to acknowledge hers. So we immediately connected Norvillia with Alliance Defending Freedom, an amazing law firm that defends our students free of charge, and they filed a federal lawsuit against the school. And 2 days later, Queens College relented and recognized the club. So that was a victory on that part. Our students at Chico State are actually facing a similar situation. It was slightly more sneaky, but what they did was, I actually drove up there and sat down with Veronica, the student, and we filled out all of the proper forms. We wrote up a constitution, a mission statement, went through all the process of finding an advisor, submitted the forms. Veronica went back 3 weeks later to see, the status of the paperwork and where it was at, and that application just disappeared. The secretary had no idea where it went or why it wasn't on the database. But I can assure you that was no accident that it was missing. Fortunately, our students are very persistent, and Veronica went ahead and filled out the paperwork again and followed up with extreme pressure. But it just goes to show that all too often we see public colleges and universities denying recognition of funding to a student just because the administration views don't align with the student views. They play favorites and they stifle free speech in the process. And also note that this isn't just on college campuses. This happens on high school campuses as well. It's actually become a routine for us to just write up a letter and send it to a high school administration explaining that they have the obligation to equally enforce their policy no matter if they agree with the student's position or not. So the next scenario you may have heard of. It happened close to home for all of you, but it wouldn't be a free speech workshop if we didn't watch the video. So this was last May. Our Fresno State Students for Life were out chalking on campus. They were writing messages supporting pregnant and parenting students and giving information about the human development of the fetus. And then this happened, so you have to watch the video.
Hey guys, we have permission for this stuff, right?
We have a teacher that's telling us to get permission. Yeah.
What's your teacher's name?
That's
You're not sure? So why are you taking them off if we have permission?
our teacher.
Your teacher told you?
You can stop recording. Yeah, I don't want to be recorded. That's actually pretty illegal to record people.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Excuse me, we have permission for all of this?
No, you don't.
We do actually have the email, and you can call student involvement. From Plan Ops and student involvement, yes.
All right, then
We do. Yes, I am.
That's perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. The whole idea of free speech is that we have a free speech area here on campus.
But we have permission for all of this.
Free speech is free speech in the free speech area. It's a pretty simple concept. Okay? This does not constitute a free speech area. Okay?
Okay, but we have
if you
permission.
Have permission, then I will verify that you have permission.
Please do, and then please tell your students to stop until you verify that.
What are my students doing that is not part of free speech?
They told you that they're wiping out what we have permission for.
If we wiping it out?
Yes, I did. I actually have video of it.
Okay, here, let me show you.
You didn't have permission to record. I don't want to be recorded.
You have permission to put it down.
Yes, we
I
do.
have permission to get rid of it.
Good to know.
This is our part of free speech. Do you disagree with our part of free speech?
Absolutely, I disagree.
Really?
And you disagree with mine, too.
No, I don't. If you would have written this over there, I am perfectly fine with you doing it. I am perfectly fine with you having a free speech in the free speech area.
But you're exercising your free speech in a non-free speech area.
College campuses are not free speech areas. You understand? Obviously, you don't understand.
I know.
So Thatcher said some unbelievably incorrect statements that we can very clearly watch. But I want to take a few minutes to enjoy that, because I think my favorite is free speech is free speech in the free speech area. So Bernadette contacted our regional coordinator at the time, who connected her with ADF. The students took Professor Thatcher to court for violating their First Amendment rights. So Fresno State Students for Life versus William Gregory Thatcher resulted in a success for both the pro-life movement and First Amendment rights. A settlement was the result, where Thatcher paid both Bernadette Tazy and Jesus Herrera each $1,000, along with some attorney fees, and he was also required to go through a couple hours of free speech training with ADF, which I'm sure was fun for the lawyers at ADF. I wish I could have sat in on that. But just to clarify, public universities are public property. Public entities cannot restrict your First Amendment rights. They cannot filter your content, and they cannot discriminate based on their viewpoints. You have the right to go to a public college campus and exercise your free speech rights. So free speech zones were a trend for a while. Luckily, Fresno State had removed their free speech area policy a couple years ago, so they weren't in trouble for that. But quite honestly, it's hard to believe that anyone even tries to use that phrase, free speech zone, anymore, because it's completely unconstitutional. So the sign on the right that you're looking at was actually at Diablo Valley College, and it's another method that university administration is attempting to use to filter what is said on campus. Of course, they only put this sign out when it's pro-life displays on campus, not when Planned Parenthood or NARAL shows up. So if we go on to the next one. That sign actually worked in favor for us. It actually got more students out to our display because they were curious what was going on. So we were okay with it being out there at that point. But the previous cases I talked about were all on public campuses, and that's important to note. They were not on private campuses. Public schools have the obligation to protect students' First Amendment rights free of viewpoint-based discrimination. However, private schools have the freedom to choose what goes on campus, what happens there, and that's part of the beauty of private schools. It sometimes leads to difficulty when trying to express the pro-life message on campus, though. And so when we do have students on private campuses who voices are being filtered, we challenge them to hold their administration accountable. But that is an important note, that it is different on private school campuses. I do have a couple examples in a minute about private school campuses. So we'll go on to the next slide. A trend we're also seeing is that it's not just the administration filtering students. It's actually other students attempting to silence our students. So this is a situation that actually happened on a Catholic school campus, St. Louis University. It's a Catholic university, and this was last October. Late on a Monday night, someone went and vandalized Cemetery of the Innocent display, and the crosses represented lives lost to abortion and other acts of violence. So it was actually not just an abortion issue, but somebody did go and vandalize that display. So the SLU students actually had permission to be out there. The administration allowed for it, and once this happened, they filed a report, and the school investigated it. The students actually asked their president to make a comment on what happened, and he made a statement actually condemning the acts of vandalism and defending the students' ability to educate on the topic, which was really encouraging. So although it's different on a private campus, we can still encourage the administration to acknowledge students' ability to converse and debate and start conversation. So if we go to the next slide. So back to this topic of students filtering other students and restricting each other's First Amendment rights. This is crazy, but a recent poll showed that 20% of students now support using violence to prevent controversial speakers from being heard on campus. That is where we are at on our campuses. So here's an example of, if we go to the next slide, of a student actually attempting to steal part of a display on a campus.
Hi, how are you?
Hello.
Hi, if you could please put those back. This is actually a space that we have a permit for, and this is not your property.
Okay.
So if you would mind putting the crosses down, please.
I mean, do I have to?
Yes, this is not your property, and we have a permit for the space. So we have campus police ready to come.
Okay.
So go ahead and put the crosses down. We'd appreciate that.
Huh?
If you'd put the crosses down, we would appreciate that. Because you're currently taking our property.
I mean, I thought it was just for people to take.
Nope. But I understand how you could be mistaken, so thank you. Go ahead and put them down.
So that's just one of the many examples we have. I mean, students going and ripping up other students' signs, taking, boxes of our pamphlets and running away with them. It's happened. And something to note about that, whether you're on a public campus or out on a sidewalk in front of Planned Parenthood, exercising your free speech rights, note that those signs, that literature, that is all your private property. If somebody does decide to go and grab your sign and rip it up, they could be held legally liable for the destruction of your private property. So that is something to note. And then my final example for the day actually happened this week. So our Students for Life of America president, Kristen Hawkins, is doing a speaking tour entitled Lies Feminists Tell. It's obviously a very controversial topic, but what it does is it draws the direct link between second wave feminism and the abortion industry, and that's what it's about. And we've had to be a little bit sneaky about how we release that tour because students actually have planned to try to shut down these kind of talks in the past. They will sit in and try to cancel them, and they try to silence this kind of conversation on campus. So we did launch the tour on Monday, and at her first stop, Kristen arrived, and was greeted by a Planned Parenthood staffer who was handing out Planned Parenthood signs, talking points, questions she wanted students to ask in order to hopefully cause Kristen to slip up and misspeak. And so they ended up going in and asking a barrage of questions for like 30 minutes straight. And it caused the event to not be as successful as in the past, but it was amazing to have a room full of pro-choice advocates, pro-abortion advocates have to listen to a pro-life speaker for an hour. So that was great. And they did not cancel the talk, but they attempted to. Actually, afterwards, some of the pro-choice advocates have gone up to Kristen and thanked her for her commitment and for her logical talking points. So good came of the situation. This is a picture of them leaving defeated that the talks still happen. But this is the atmosphere we are dealing with. If we go on to the next slide, I could go on and on about a variety of different situations that we deal with every day on campus. In the past 6 years, we've had at least 40 cases of vandalism, of displays, of signs, you name it. We should actually add a few more to that because there's been a few in the past month. But I don't want you to be discouraged. If we go on to the next slide. There is good news. We are winning. The pro-life generation isn't backing down on campus. If anything, they're more emboldened. They have more energy now. They're ready to be out there. And as you saw in each one of these incidents, good came of it. We won in court. We educated pro-abortion advocates. we got statements from universities supporting us. So we're not losing, even with this mentality on campus. Students are still out there confronting relevant issues. They're still holding demonstrations. They're still supporting pregnant and parenting students. They're still debating, and they're still engaging their peers. And thankfully, it started a conversation on a whole new level. This was just last month, right before the March for Life. Vice President Mike Pence actually invited our students into the White House for a roundtable discussion where they told some of the stories I just told you. And he's actually working to address these situations on campus, which is so encouraging. But we need to keep the conversation going. If you go on to the next slide, we need to keep talking about this. We need to keep on our campuses and fight back to that force that is so scared and working so tirelessly to try to keep abortion legal. So I want to encourage you, if you're a parent of a student, to encourage your own child to go out on campus, because that is ground zero. The abortion industry strategically places their clinics around college campuses. They know those are the targets. Same with high schools. They strategically recruit on college and high school campuses because they know they need to control the youth to control a movement. So the campuses are literally ground zero. So I encourage you, if you are a student, get out there, continue the conversation. If you're an adult and with children, encourage them to get involved. You yourself can go out on public campuses. You have the right to be there and to be active. If you are on campus or on a public sidewalk and something starts happening, try to get it recorded. Pull out your video camera. So we have videos like that can so easily be held up in court, Try to get the administration to put it in writing. If you are a student and you go to a meeting and they tell you, you know what, you can't do this on campus, say, can you send me an email with that in it? And that makes it so much easier. Also, create a timeline. These events could be discussed months later, and it can be hard to try to remember what happened 3 months ago when stuff was going down so quickly and you lose track of it. So try to keep a record and put a timeline together. And fourth, you can call me or anyone with Students for Life of America will connect you with ADF, who will defend you for free, will walk with you through every step of the way, and will celebrate your success in the end. So please feel free to contact me at any time with Students for Life of America. And that's all I had.